Welcome to the Show Me the Way podcast. I am your host, Andrea Miller, and I'm so excited to bring this show to you. Show Me the Way is a podcast dedicated to exploring the journeys of those who have faced adversity and found themselves on unexpected paths. We will have meaningful, thoughtful conversations about challenges we have faced and how we discovered and forged new direction. Prepare to be inspired and to uncover your own strength as you listen to relatable and motivating stories. Life has a way of twisting and turning, and we often need a fresh perspective to understand how to navigate. Let's show each other the way. This week's guest, Greg Kirk, is not only our third male guest on the show, but also an incredibly inspiring speaker whose authenticity and heart will leave a lasting impression. Greg's journey is one of resilience, purpose, and deep compassion. A devoted husband and father, Greg began his career as a teacher before discovering a passion for health and wellness. Noticing a gap in care after physical therapy, he launched a business to support individuals recovering from major injuries, ensuring they didn't regress once formal treatment ended. But Greg's path took more personal turns, including the grief of losing a child, his daughter's serious health concerns, and his own health challenges. Through it all, he leaned into faith, perspective, and purpose, realizing that his family's story could be a beacon for others. Now an author and speaker, Greg shares his experiences to help others navigate adversity and find their own way forward. His passion, humility, and motivation will inspire you to look inward and make an impact in your own way. This is an episode you won't want to miss. Welcome back to the Show Me the Way podcast. As we continue to diversify the voices on the show, I'm honored to welcome our third male guest, Greg Kirk. Greg reached out after connecting with someone you might remember, Cindy Spar. She was a guest on this podcast and also the host of the God Wink podcast that I got to be a guest on. I've mentioned Cindy a few times because she's had such a meaningful impact on me and the direction of this show. So when she introduced me to Greg, I was incredibly grateful. After just one conversation, it felt like I had known Greg forever. He's one of those people who radiates kindness and passion, and I immediately knew he'd be a perfect guest. Like many of us, Greg has faced his share of challenges, but what stood out to me was how he chose to respond. Through navigating personal and family medical concerns, he made the bold decision to take a focused and intentional path for his life. His story is powerful, heartfelt, and deeply moving. So welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm blessed to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Yeah. Greg actually, I did say that Cindy introduced us, but he came to me and just said, "Hey, let's work something out here. Let's do a win-win connection." And I'm so glad that he did. And we had one conversation already, like I said, and it was so easy to talk with him. So I'm very excited for him to share his story and his perspective with our listeners, with all of you today. As you know, on the Show Me the Way podcast, we bring people on to talk about times where they've dealt with adversity, if they needed to change the path, what that looked like and what they learned from it. And when I spoke with Greg, I certainly learned a lot. So I'm very happy to have him here to share his story with all of you. But before I allow him to share what is on his heart, I said a little bit about him, but like I just said, we just met recently. So I'm going to let him share a little bit more about himself, and then we'll jump right in. So Greg, tell us some more about you, your family, where you live, that kind of thing.
Sure. No, I appreciate that warm introduction, Andrea. I'm a Michigan-made guy. I was born and raised in Michigan, Bloomfield Hills to be exact, and went to Western Michigan. So go Broncos.
So exciting, the hockey championship recently.
It is. I was going to throw a plug into them as well and congratulate them on winning the national championship. That is just huge for that program. It's really elevated them to a different kind of tier of competitiveness. It's great. And it was so fun to see the entire state kind of get behind them. It didn't matter if you were going to Michigan State, U of M, dare I say Central Michigan. They were all kind of cheering for the Broncos. So it was a lot of fun to see that.
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, I graduated from Western Michigan with an education degree. And like so many of us, right, when we graduate, we think that that's what we're going to do for the next 30 years in our career. But I actually only turned out being a teacher for about 4 years, and then pivoted and got into the fitness, health and wellness and rehabilitation space. And in doing so, I formed my own company and ran a successful company for 15 years, and then sold that, and then got into the consulting space, which I'm doing today. And I absolutely love it. And here I am today. So that's a little bit about my background, and I'm sure we can get into more of the personal challenges and adversity that I've had come about too later on in the podcast.
Of course. Of course. And you're married, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So I neglected that whole piece, didn't
That's
I?
okay.
Been married for 21 years. I met my wife in college as well, and we have one daughter who's just turned 18 over the weekend, so she's excited to be a legal adult
Happy
now,
birthday to her.
right? And her name is Olivia, and she is off to Michigan State in the fall.
That's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
her. Oh, lots of things happening for you. Just it's never a boring time in life, huh? There's
It
always
really
something.
is. It's an exciting time, that's for
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
for all those parents that have children, especially high schoolers, I'm sure that they know the senior year of high school goes so fast. It just flies by, and we're trying to soak in every minute of it because Olivia is our only child. So this is happening so fast. We're trying to digest it all.
Yes, yeah, and we talked that I have a son that's 18, actually he'll be 19 next month, and let me tell you, freshman year of college goes by even faster. I
Oh,
cannot
right.
believe that that's already done. He is actually moving home this week, so it
Okay.
blows my mind because you're right, senior year was crazy, and
Yeah.
now he's already done with his first year of college, so
I think my wife will be happy about that. She just wants her
yeah.
home.
I know, that's I'm so excited that he's coming home. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you are right. You need to just hold on to all of it as much as you can and take advantage of time together for sure.
Right.
And then it becomes more special. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then you get them for a long time between
Right.
what, April and August. So
Yeah,
it's a nice amount of
exactly.
time. You get them home for the summer.
Yes. Yes, looking forward to that. So, yeah, like I told you, the first time Greg and I spoke, it was like we've been friends forever. So, I'll get us back on track here. It's easy for me to talk with Greg, so I'm going off on a tangent here, but yeah, like I said, I encourage my guests to just talk about what is on their heart. Sometimes it's a medical diagnosis for your child or for yourself, like I've talked about, like Greg's going to talk about. Sometimes it's different jobs. I mean, geez, he already used the pivot word and we haven't even gotten into his story yet. So many times, many of us get a college degree and we think this is what we're going to do. I had my niece on a few weeks ago and she's 25 and she's already changed jobs a couple of times. So that happens to all of us where there's always different opportunities and different doors that open. So some people have come on here and talked about that. Some have talked about grief, all kinds of different stories that people have where they faced adversity, they faced some kind of challenge and they needed to pivot and follow a different path. And the older I get, the more I learn that there's all kinds of twists and turns on those paths. So it's been really great to have guests on here to share everything. People I've known forever telling me things I've never heard before, and people like Greg that I've just met that just educate me and will educate all of you as listeners and just help us understand that we can get through difficult times and we can see the light and we can make a difference outside of whatever we've been through. So, like I said, Greg and I spoke a lot. So, I kind of have an idea of the direction that he's going to go in, but there's really no script here. We're just having a casual conversation and we'll see what Greg wants to share with all of us. But I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to open up the mic and allow Greg to share what's on his heart.
Sure. So that's a great introduction, Andrea. Kind of feeds us into the personal struggles that I've gone through, not only myself but with my family. So back in 2006, I started my company, and things were going fantastic. We kind of started growing right off the bat, which was unusual. But I was able to develop a niche in the rehabilitation industry that really wasn't being done, and I term it fitness therapy. So when I was working with these individuals that got injured in auto accidents, mainly catastrophic injuries, brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, amputations, people with obviously very severe conditions, they go through the course of physical therapy. And then after they were done, there wasn't anything out there for these individuals afterwards. Sure, they could go to the gym, but then they'd have to navigate around the gym by themselves. And a lot of times they didn't have the knowledge to do that, or they didn't have the physical means to be able to do that. Just simple things like hooking a bar to a cable, bending down and reaching a dumbbell. They could not do those types of things based on their limitations physically. So a lot of times they would have to bring in a family member to help them. And so to set them up consistently for success was hard. And so many times they get frustrated and they just wouldn't do it. And many times because of that, they would just sit at home, and all the gains that they made in physical therapy started going to the wayside. So they'd have to come back to physical therapy and start all over again. And you kept seeing this vicious cycle happening again and again. So when I was working at the Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan, that's where I first started my career. And I was working under these physical therapists. And I went to the physical therapist. I said, "Do you see the same trend that I do? These people are making great gains in physical therapy, but then they come back and they'd have to start all over again." And they just kind of looked at each other and they said, "Yeah, because there's no other program out there after physical therapy. Personal trainers are skilled in working with able-bodied individuals, but they don't necessarily know and specialize in injuries." So that's when I thought to myself, that is a need that's not being fulfilled that I can help with. Why don't I start an aftercare program for these individuals and basically be this specialized personal trainer that only works with catastrophic injuries? So that's what I decided to do. And like I said, it took off very quickly just based on the need. So that was great. And so that was back in 2006. And we had my daughter in 2007. And again, life was great. Had a nice career. My wife is a first grade teacher, so she was secure in her teaching career. We bring in this daughter into the world, right? And she appeared to be healthy for about the first 6 months after birth. And then slowly after that, she started showing signs and symptoms that just something wasn't right. She was profusely sweating, projectile vomiting. We, being new parents, we weren't exactly sure what was going on. And we thought, oh, okay, projectile vomiting can be normal for some babies. And obviously they sweat and that type of thing. But when we took her to the doctor, he put the stethoscope up to her back and he could tell something wasn't right. He goes, "There's fluid in her lungs. Basically, she needs to get down to the hospital right away." So we rushed her down to the hospital. And at first, they didn't know what was going on. They were running all sorts of tests, put her through an x-ray, and they thought that she had a mass in her chest the size of a softball. They thought it was a tumor. So, of course, we thought that she had cancer. And it turned out, after further testing, that that tumor that they thought was actually her heart. Her heart was enlarged, and she was diagnosed with a heart disease called dilated cardiomyopathy. And what that is it's a enlarged left ventricle, and it doesn't contract the blood out of the heart to the rest of the body as efficiently as a normal heart would. And there's no cure for that disease. You can treat it, and ultimately, if it doesn't work out, then a heart transplant would be needed. So fortunately, my daughter took to the medication in the hospital, and for whatever reason, her heart adapted, and she was doing great, right? So for the large part of her childhood, things were pretty good. Like we didn't see too much of a difference. We'd have to go to the hospital for checkups twice a year, but for the most part, the doctor said she was stable and everything looked pretty good. Nobody ever thought that it would be hereditary or anything like that because nobody in the family really had heart disease, so we didn't know where this came from. They thought that this was from a virus. So we decided we've always wanted 2 to 3 children. That was kind of our personal goal as a family. And so in 2010, we had another daughter named Amelia. And when we brought Amelia home, about 6 weeks after birth, she started showing the same signs and symptoms as our first daughter. And unfortunately, we brought her to the hospital and she was diagnosed with that same heart disease. And she never made it out of the hospital after that. Nothing ever went her way the entire time through the hospital. It was very unfortunate. She ended up dying in my arms, took her last breath right in my arms, and just kind of changed my life forever after that. Just showed me how fragile life can be and how fortunate we all are to still be here and still be functioning. And it's just such a blessing life can be. So right after that, the doctors knew that this was obviously hereditary. We had to get this figured out. So we went down to Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, where they have some world-renowned genetic testing. My whole family went down, we got tested, and that's when they found out that I actually had the heart disease. And I never knew that I had this disease. I was living with it my whole life and never knew that I had it. So it was really powerful. I met this one doctor down there as he diagnosed me. It was a kind of traumatic event. I felt so bad for my wife because she was sitting there and one by one she was watching her whole family kind of be infected with this disease, and she was the only one that was healthy. So she felt guilty because of that. So this doctor that was in the room with us talking to us just was such a blessing at the time. He goes, are you a religious individual? And I said, I could be more religious. I could attend church more often, but I said, yes, I was raised Christian and I'm very faithful. I believe in a higher power. And he goes, I'm glad that you said that because I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And he goes, your daughter died for a purpose, and she was put on this earth for a purpose, and that was to save your life. From my medical expertise, just judging by your lifestyle of staying fit and being healthy and working out, and at the time I was 32 years old. In my expert medical opinion, you would probably have died of a heart attack in your 40s on a treadmill or lifting weights or whatnot, because that's what happens with this disease. They call it the silent killer because you don't know you have it, and then all of a sudden you're doing some sort of high cardiac output, either sport or activity, and a lot of times that's you collapse dead of a heart attack. So from that point on, they were able to stabilize my condition by putting me on medication, and I have, knock on wood, been very healthy the entire time. I've basically never known that I've had the heart disease. So that's kind of how this whole thing came about. And after that, we were living life pretty much like any normal family would, except for just some more checkups at the hospital. And then 2018 happened. And on Thanksgiving night back in 2018, my daughter was complaining about a stomach ache. This was actually unrelated to her heart condition. It just, she, for whatever reason, she had a stomach ache. And we were driving home from my mom's house from Thanksgiving. And she kept complaining about it. And we got into the house and we were getting ready for bed. And she actually said, I want to sleep with you guys. Just my stomach doesn't feel right. So I knew just having an 11-year-old in the bed and, in the middle of my wife and I, neither of us were going to get a good night's sleep. So I opted out and I slept in the guest bedroom while my daughter and my wife slept in our bed. And I'll tell you, that was a blessing in disguise because at about 3:30 in the morning or so, and I sleep like a rock, nothing ever wakes me up. And I wake up to the sound of choking and gasping, and I didn't know what that was. And my wife actually turned on the light and started screaming for me. And I sprang out of the guest bedroom, ran across the hall, and when I looked into our bedroom, our daughter was, it looked like she was having a seizure. Her eyes were rolled back in her head, her lips were blue. She was sheet white, just pale as a ghost. And I just remember diving for my phone and calling 911. And it just almost was a blur after that. And what was happening was she was in cardiac arrest. And so oftentimes when you have dilated cardiomyopathy, which I was unaware at the time, it can trigger abnormal arrhythmias in the heart. And so now she's kind of battling two different types of heart conditions. She's battling the structure and the function itself, but then now she's also battling the electrical abnormalities that she's having. So when she was in cardiac arrest that night, called 911, we had to literally put her down on our bedroom floor and begin the process of CPR. And before I even really could start the process, the first responders came through the front door and up the stairs, and thank goodness for them. They were able to, resuscitate her and shock paddle her back to a normal rhythm, all just right on our bedroom floor. It was just so surreal. And they rushed us down to the hospital, and that is really where the real nightmare began because she was so stable for so many years. And then after that, we find out that, unfortunately, she has these abnormal arrhythmias, which sometimes it occurs in patients with dilated cardiomyopathy, and then sometimes it doesn't. And unfortunately, hers did. So ever since 2018, she's had a defibrillator installed just in case it happens again. It was quiet for 2 years after that. And then in 2020, when we were in softball practice, I was the assistant coach and one of my other friends was the head coach. So we were having practice with the girls. And my daughter was running, just jogging. She doesn't run too much because of obviously her heart condition, but she was jogging the bases. And I could tell she was getting a little winded. So I told her to, hey, settle down and take it easy. And so she went over and got a drink of water. And then she came back and I could see her just jump and she reached for her chest. And I looked over and I said, are you okay? And she goes, no, it shocked me. And it just was so surreal. It shocked her again, and it shocked her repeatedly, almost 12 times before her defibrillator stopped. And she was conscious for all of that. We were calling 911, and it took a while for the ambulance to arrive. And by the time the ambulance got there, the defibrillator had shocked her enough. It brought her heart back into a normal rhythm. But the emotional scars that were left behind because of that were just, it was a very long road. And that was kind of the first experience we ever had of a defibrillator going off and shocking somebody. So it left you very vulnerable because there's nothing you can do about it. And since that time, she's been shocked 7 or 8 other times, and it's left her in a fragile state. You just never know when or where you're going to get shocked, and a lot of emotional baggage comes from that. So it's been a long road, and we've switched hospitals a couple times. We ended up at U of M Mott Children's Hospital. That's just done a fantastic job, and we've tried a couple different ablations on Olivia's heart to hopefully stop the arrhythmias, but unfortunately those were not successful. And then she was shocked one more time, and that was when the doctors finally said, there's really not much more we can do. We've switched up her medications. We've done everything that we can do as far as the ablations. Really, the next step would be a heart transplant at this point. So my wife and I and daughter were just kind of at the bottom of the barrel, just really thinking like there was going to be no other solution but a heart transplant. And it's great to have that option. We live in a country where we're so fortunate to be able to have that option if we need it, but it's still the last resort that you want to have for your child. So right around that time, I went down to Cleveland Clinic. That's where I have my care. And when I was down there, I was talking to my cardiologist, and he always asks how my daughter's doing. And this time I told him that, we're not doing very well. This is kind of what's happening. And she might have to be enlisted for a heart transplant if her defibrillator goes off again. And he just stopped to listen, and he goes, there's a gentleman that I want you to meet. He's really one of the best in the world, in his opinion, in ventricular tachycardia. I would like for you guys and your daughter to consult with him before you think about enlisting her for a heart transplant. And at the time, my daughter was 17, so she was a minor. And it just took an immense amount of communication to get through that red tape for her to go and see an adult cardiologist. So finally, after months, we were able to get in and see him. And there's just such a long waiting list of people that want to see this gentleman because of his background. So finally, we get in to see him, and it was just like one of those individuals that I feel like it was divine intervention. He was sent to us from a higher power, because he came in after studying all of Olivia's charts and medical history, and he walked in and he goes, I understand that you're going through a very hard time right now, but I do believe that I can help you with this condition. I think I can stop these arrhythmias from happening. I might not be able to cure them, but I think I'll be able to stop them for years to come. It's my opinion that in a year from now, you will live a totally different life, and you will be arrhythmia free, and you will live life like a normal child. And at first, we had a hard time believing it because no other doctor could stop these arrhythmias from happening. So we kind of tread lightly, and we didn't want to be too optimistic, but at the same time, that hope meant everything to us. And so we went back down to Cleveland Clinic after that, and he wanted to perform another ablation on Olivia's heart. So he did that on May 2nd of 2024, and till this day, it's almost been almost exactly a year later, she has not had another arrhythmia. She has not been shocked by her defibrillator, and she has lived her best life in years and years. So it's just been an amazing to see that transformation, and to see a child just living life the way that you're supposed to is just amazing. So her senior year has been her best year by far, and she's just looking forward to going to college and living life like that. And doctors said, it could happen again, but he goes, I don't expect it to for years from now. And if it does, I can go back in and do another ablation. But I think that your heart, from a function standpoint, is stable enough to where you're not going to need a heart transplant. So that was the best news we could have received.
Oh, what a story. That had to have just been so scary for you and your wife, her as a baby, and then every time there was these activities, is something gonna happen? I mean, seeing that on your bedroom floor, wow, so many emotions as I'm listening to you
Yeah.
tell that story. Wow, and
Yeah.
I love how you talk about divine intervention. That's the only way to explain that.
Right. It really is. I don't have any other explanation for it. And, just so many. times where they're just little things like the doctor that came into our life, or the other doctor from Children's at Cincinnati Hospital who gave us that perspective of our second daughter who passed away being this guardian angel who was sent to Earth to be able to help me understand that I had this heart disease. It just was amazing. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. I used to not believe in that, and it was frustrating to hear that at times. But when I reflect back on all the circumstances that took place, I really do believe in that.
We are so much alike in that regard because I used to hate that too. When my son was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, so many people would say things happen for a reason. And I just could never comprehend that. I would always say, why? Why did that happen to him? Why was he chosen? Why did that happen to our family? But you're right. Looking back, your immediate response to something like that, I'm sure you and your wife and your daughter have had some very low days. Not every day you're gonna feel grateful and joyful and hopeful. You're gonna have some bad days, but with perspective and time, when you look back and you just say there are reasons for everything. So it's crazy that you just said that because I think exactly the same way. I was so mad about that phrase for the longest time, and
Yeah.
now I just think it's so true. There's a path laid out. Like we talked about at the beginning, might have some twists and turns, but I strongly believe that God has laid out a path for all of us. And exactly what the doctor in Cincinnati said to you, I feel that with my son, Nathan. I feel like all of this happened to him because he had something that he needed to teach all of us. And that's what he does on a daily basis. So, what an amazing perspective. And I really do admire you for taking that and then living the rest of your life with that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I really do believe it's a conscious choice to be able to say, look, I can live my life one of two ways. I can either dwell on this and let it eat me alive and go down that path of negativity, or you can try to create a purpose for why this happened and just live your life with that new purpose and be positive. You got to find the positivity in the most of negative situations. That's always my goal. It's like, okay, I know that this might be the worst thing that we're going through in life right now, but how do we find the positive? How do we find the positivity out of it? And if you can really just discipline yourself to think that way, it'll lead you to such a healthier life than to just let the negativity consume you and go down the negative path. And I like what you said about, we've seen our fair share of difficult times, and we certainly have, just like a lot of other people that go through adversity do. But it makes the other times that much sweeter when you do have good days. It just makes you appreciate it so much more. And that is the gift I think that this disease gave us, is the fact that it makes us appreciate life and friends and family so much more, and it really makes you value life.
Definitely. I met with some friends yesterday and we were talking about, because I kind of want to get onto this too. I want to talk about your wife and your relationship. We talked about how so many times families struggle, and one of the biggest things that can pull two people apart, marriages apart, is having some kind of medical concern happen within your family. It's very, very difficult to deal with. And you come from completely different places and you deal with things completely different. And so there's so many times that you see people, even in the Duchenne community, will see single moms and single dads. So much of that. I think it is definitely so special to know that you and your wife decided to be partners and to get through all of this together. And I wanted to hear your perspective on that. But yeah, it's amazing how stressful it can be for families, and the ones that make it through together, what that looks like. And I just think that's very important and so special if you're able to hold on to a partnership.
Oh, you're exactly right. And unfortunately, I've seen the other part of relationships where, just through my own clients that I worked with, individuals that have had those catastrophic injuries, unfortunately, it just provides so much stress to the family, whether it's financial or just their overall health every single day. It just provides so much stress. And unfortunately, you see a lot of relationships crumble because of that. And my wife and I were just so fortunate enough to lean on each other. And I'm more of a vocal individual. I will go out and I like to talk about all of our adversity that we've had and how it's helped us. And my wife's a little bit more private. She's more reserved. And, a lot of people think that I'm the strong one because of that, because I'll go out and I'll talk about it. But I've got to tell you, it's completely, in my mind, the opposite. My wife is the rock, to be honest with you, of the family. And there's been a lot of times where I was at a low point in my life, and my wife was the one that picked me up, and she was the one that brought me up. And there's also been times where she's been very down, and I've had to pick her up. So it's really a team effort, and I have more respect and admiration for my wife now after going through this ordeal than I ever have before. It's hard to see sometimes during it, but when you have time to step back and reflect on all the things that have happened in your life and these unfortunate circumstances, I look back and I say, "Wow, I would not have been able to get through this if it wasn't for my wife and how much she just was always there." And that's the one other thing I think that was so important. We were always there together. There was not a time where she went to the hospital alone and I stayed home. And I understand that everybody's situation is different. There are a lot of times where both parents can't be there. We were fortunate enough to always be able to be there together. And I think because of that, that really helped us through as well. And that helped my daughter out. I know that she's vocalized that too. Just having both parents there in the ICU room or whatnot was such a blessing to have that.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. Really, of course, there's no judgment to those that recognize that their differences can't be figured out and they need to separate and they need to do things differently. So there are times that relationships or partnerships or families just can't hold on to certain situations, and I totally get that. And to each your own, everybody has their own story and their own path. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It just means a lot that it's just a blessing. It's a complete blessing that I have a partner, and that same thing, we were able to do a lot of the appointments together. My son was in a trial in Chicago, and my husband and I were able to partner on that quite a bit, and I just feel very blessed for that. And then you also mentioned friends and other family as well, and that's another thing I was telling somebody yesterday. We're so blessed for our friends too. People could say, it's too difficult. We want to go do these things, and you have a son in a wheelchair, and it's hard to accommodate. But our friends don't do that. They just look past it and they say, "What is the easiest route for you? How can we make this whole situation better for all of you?" So again, just a blessing that we have people like that in our lives.
Yes, I can't agree with you more. Matter of fact, when my second daughter passed away, and I was up at the funeral giving a speech about her life, and that is one of the things that I brought to everybody's attention. I said, some of the good that came out of this was in a society right now filled with negativity and just hostility. I said, we have come across so many individuals, strangers, friends, families who were just willing to bend over backwards and help however they could. So you really saw the good in people come out in those situations. And it just kind of restores your faith in humanity for the fact that people want to do the right thing and people really want to help any way that they can. So it was amazing to see people just giving us gift cards or coming to the hospital and trying to visit, dropping off flowers, cooking us meals, just amazing acts of kindness. And it was just so humbling to see that and really know that we're not in this alone. And I think that that was the main message was that, hey, whatever you need, we're in this with you. However we can help, let us know and we will be there with you. So that was amazing to receive that type of kindness from friends and family.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you had mentioned earlier that Olivia is getting ready to go to Michigan State,
Yeah.
which we all know that this is amazing blue house over here, but I've heard nothing but good things about those that go to Michigan State. My son's girlfriend is currently going there, and she will be finishing up her semester this week, and she's had a great year there. So there's nothing but good things to say about the education, the opportunities, the big campus. So there's all kinds of things to get involved with. How is her excitement level on going there? Does she have some nerves about the heart condition and being away from you guys? How is she doing with all of that?
She has not expressed any nerves about her heart condition or anything like that, but she wants to get away and live life. I think she's been so sheltered her whole life because of this heart condition. I just look at her back when you're 16, a lot of kids want to get their license and they want to go and they want to drive and get their freedom. She was not able to do that. So she was sheltered and she was so scared of her heart condition when her defibrillator was shocking her consistently during those, ninth, 10th, 11th grade years. She wouldn't go out. She wouldn't socialize. She'd stay and isolate herself in her bedroom a lot of times. So now that she's healthy and she has that confidence to go out and she wants to go and kind of, hey, I'm going to conquer the world, at 18. And now I'm going to go to college. I want to get away. And, she always tells us, she's like, once I'm done with my sophomore year, I'm never coming home. Right. Like you can visit me, but then I'm going to go out, stay at Michigan State after I graduate. Her dream would be to move down to Charleston, South Carolina. She loves the warm weather down there. She loves the ocean and just the town itself. So that would be her dream once she graduates. Michigan State would be to move down there.
That is so great. In fact, I think we should have you back in a year so you can tell us how everything went with her first year at Michigan State.
I know. That would be great. I'm really interested to know too. Hopefully, she likes that bigger campus feel. She likes the big
Mhm.
atmosphere. She goes to a school right now. It's a private school. It only has about 650 kids in the entire school itself. So I think she's ready to just venture on and see what a bigger environment has to offer.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
all of the best to her and to mom and dad as you have the empty nest for a little
Great.
bit.
Thank you. We're gonna need it.
Yeah, so for sure. So I really like what you said when you were talking about the fitness therapy and how there was this need and you needed to address it and you did and it really helped so many people. I'm sure the things that you've been through in life have helped your perspective and I'm sure when you have people that you work with, you can pass that on to them. These are people that do need hope and do need to understand that there's life after what they've been through. Have you found that you've been able to kind of express that a little bit more because you've been through so many challenges yourself?
Absolutely. I think that just connected us that much more, at least myself with those individuals. And a lot of times I was learning through them, and I still am, of course, but they now had the chance to learn through me. And there was one individual who really, gosh, he said this probably close now to 15 years ago, but when this whole thing was happening with my daughter, and unfortunately, when my second daughter passed away, he was a father himself. He's a father of two. And so we were talking when we were working together, and he just said, I can't imagine what you're going through. And I said, well, Chris, I'm sure you have some sort of idea of the adversity that it takes. And he goes, I got to tell you, I would go through my amputation 50 times over if it meant just keeping my kids safe and keeping them healthy. Because there's nothing worse than something happening to your child. I can't imagine how strong of a person you and your wife are. And he goes, you guys just inspire me every day to keep continuing to get up and basically fight the good fight in my own condition. Because I just want to let you guys know that you inspire me to keep going every day. So that, really hit home for me. And when I had that conversation with him, it just showed me that we can feed off one another and feed off one another's positivity. And so that just made me really connect with the clients. And I was already connected with them beforehand, but this just made it that much more. And just to hear their stories, just they're so inspiring. I can't even tell you some of the stories that I've heard, and you know they're just so positive. And it sounds weird to say that because of these horrific conditions that they have and these horrific circumstances that they've had to battle through. But again, finding that positivity and that light at the end of the tunnel has just been amazing. There is this one younger female, this really powerful story, and this is what truly made me believe that how can there not be a higher power in all of this? So this young lady was visiting her parents late at night. Her parents didn't want her to leave the house, but she said, I had somewhere to be in the morning, so I just wanted to be home for that. And she left their house, and it was I guess it was a pretty heavy rainstorm at that point. She was driving down the expressway, fell asleep at the wheel, came to, and she was halfway off the expressway, tried to correct herself back onto the expressway, and swerved and went sideways on the expressway, flipping her car. And she flipped her car over and over again. She was ejected and was laying in the middle of the expressway in the pouring rain. And the paramedics came, obviously had to resuscitate her, everything else, but she knew that she died and she came back to life when she was resuscitated. And she told me that she saw the light. And she goes, what they say is true. And she said, my grandfather came down from the light, put his arm around me, and then we started to progress towards the light. And she goes, after that, there was like this portal that appeared, and it was like this energy, and this energy sucked me out of the portal. And there I was laying in my hospital room. And to hear her say that just sent shivers down my spine. And that's just how I learned from those types of individuals. So I was sitting there, and this is the first time I met this young lady. And typically, what we do is we sit there and we have a questionnaire that we fill out. And one of the questions is, can you tell us about the nature of your accident? So that is when she told me this story and how the accident occurred. And about 3 months after that story occurred, I met another gentleman who he had a spinal cord injury. And I asked him the same question. Can you tell me about the nature of your accident, how it occurred? And he literally told me the same story verbatim, but instead of um, a relative coming down from the light, Jesus came down from the light, literally was progressing him back to light and said, everything's going to be okay. You're going to come with me. And he said the same thing. He said, I felt this energy, and this energy just took me away. And I came to, and I was in the hospital room with doctors and nurses and alarms going off and everything else. And he got pretty deep into the story by saying, I know that the afterlife is true. I know what it feels like. And it's the most warm, peaceful feeling that you'll ever imagine. And he goes, I wanted to get back to that spot so bad. And I knew that the condition that I had to live with for the rest of my life, and I didn't want to do that. And he goes, I was thinking about ways of taking my own life, because I knew that I couldn't do that because I wouldn't be able to get back to that spot if I took my own life. So I realized that God has sent me back here for a purpose, and I have to fulfill that purpose before I can go and live my eternal life. So when I heard those two stories, and those two individuals, by the way, they did not know one another. So they couldn't have possibly have talked to each other to tell me the same story. So when I heard that, it just was truly amazing. And that was the power of my job. That was the gift that I got to go to work every day and listen to. So it was really amazing to hear those types of stories. And that's why I always tell people, live your purpose and do what you want to do and what makes you passionate, because life is short. And to be able to have that gift of going to work and really not having it feel like work is amazing.
I always say this. There's been like 3 or 4 podcasts, even recently, where I always use Cindy's God wink terminology here.
Yeah.
There's always a reason why I have a person on the podcast on the day that I have them on it. I don't divine intervention with scheduling or something. But my mom just told me a story very similar to the two you just shared just last night. So she's so funny. She'll call me and we'll talk. And then so many times we'll hang up, and then 3 seconds later she calls back because there's something she forgot to tell me. It happens to us all the time. So yesterday she's like, "Oh, I have to tell you the story about my friend." And it was very similar. I don't recall exactly what the friend was going through, but she was in the hospital and she experienced almost or dying and coming back to life as well. And she said it was very similar to what you just said. She saw a bunch of her family and friends. She saw those that have already passed, and then she saw people that are still with her. And it was almost like, we're here and we want you to come to us, but it's not time yet. And so the people that are still here were like, we're here, come back to us because you've got more of a purpose. I strongly believe there's something else she is supposed to do.
Yes, I totally believe that. And I have one more story, even with my own father who passed away in 2016. He was laying in his hospital bed and he died 2 days after this. But it was my sister, myself, and his wife, and we were all gathered around the hospital bed just talking. And my dad was basically nonverbal at that point, and it was amazing. All of a sudden, he put his hands up in the air and he mumbled the light. And he said it 3 times. He said, the light, the light, the light. And he reached for it. And my sister didn't hear and couldn't make out what he said. But, my dad's wife and I looked at each other and we said, did you hear that? And she goes, I did. And I go, he said the light. We both said it at the same time. And we just looked at each other like, oh my gosh, that. And it really gave me such a peaceful feeling to know that, and my dad died of bladder cancer, and it metastasized to all organs of his body. So really, there was going to be no saving him. So we all knew the outcome, but at the same time, for him to be able to say that brought me peace of mind to know that he's going to a better place and that he is going to live the rest of his eternal life that way. Just really just brought shivers down my spine again, and it was amazing to hear that and experience that. Was just, again, peace of mind knowing too that he can be with my daughter up there as well, and my daughter has my dad to help her out and take care of her up there. It's
That's what
great.
I was going to say, full circle, because it can also give you peace knowing that your baby daughter went somewhere after her time here, her very short but very impactful time here.
Right. I think
Wow.
about that often, actually. That yeah, she is still up there, and I will get to see her again. So I usually, now I make it a point to never say goodbye or bye. I always say I will see you later or I will see you again, because that's really true. Even if we might not see one another here again on Earth, but we will see each other again eventually afterwards. So that is
Wow.
my little caption on. See you later.
I love that. So powerful. Wow. I'm really enjoying the way this conversation is going. You just never
Yeah.
know where you're going to go. So thank
Right.
you for sharing all of that. A couple things, and then I know we will wrap up. But
Sure.
you had said, I really appreciate all the admirable things you said about your wife. I just enjoyed that you shared so many great things about her. But I don't think that means that you're not strong as well. Just listening to you talk, I think you just have different strengths. And what I have learned about my relationship with my husband is if there's times that he's down, I try to be strong. And if there's times that I'm down, he will come and hold me, or, give me a hug or whatever I need. He can tell that he needs to be the strong one at that time. And it was a lot more when we first got the diagnosis with my son. It happened a lot more, but now it's like you create this kind of balance where when one is down, the other holds you up. And I've
Yeah.
just felt that so much. So I'm sure your wife would say you are the strong one as well for her. So both of you have, your strengths are just different. And I appreciate that you're vocal about it and that you want to share the story. As soon as my son was diagnosed and we started talking about it, there's so many people that have stories that they wanted to share. And they're like, "Oh, I've been through that. Oh, I know somebody who's been through something like that." And it just opens everybody up. And that's why I wanted to create this platform. So I'm very grateful that you are open to sharing your story. And I hope you keep your voice going. And with that being said, tell us a little bit more about what you've got going on. Where your current projects are, and where you're taking all of this.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I am actually in the process of writing a book right now, and I'm titling it Pain to Purpose. So, what I am doing is I have taken a number of the clients that I used to work with, and I'm featuring them in different chapters of the book, and I'm telling their story. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to spread awareness and I want to spread education, not only about the different conditions, but just what they go through on a daily basis and how they live their life. And I think that if more readers are aware of these types of conditions and what people have to go through, there'll be more compassion towards it. There will be more education towards those conditions. So that is kind of the essence of the book. But I also created 4 principles based around purpose, and that is what helped get me through my adversity. And I wanted to see if it would help anybody else get through their adversity and their trying times. So what I did is I interviewed all the clients that are featured in my book, and I did not talk to them about the principles that I created in my mind that helped get me through my challenging times. And it was just so interesting as I was interviewing them. They literally told me verbatim, all the clients that I interviewed all told me that the same 4 principles that got me through my challenging times got them through their challenging times. So I knew that I had something there. So what I'm going to do is I'm, writing the book and telling their story, but I'm also featuring the 4 principles that can help people get through their trying times and kind of create their new purpose. And I always say create purpose, because I hear oftentimes people say, finding my purpose, discovering my purpose, uncovering my purpose. But and a lot of times it's almost like they take a passive approach and just sit back and hope that their purpose finds them. But I always try to tell them and I encourage them, no, take a proactive approach and create your purpose. Well, life is short. Don't waste another minute trying to find it, or letting it discover you. You go and you create it. And that's what I decided to do back when I was in my very dark place. And my daughter kept going to the hospital every month. After I sold my business, I started working with a home healthcare company, and it was a great home healthcare company. I just didn't. I wanted to go back and work for myself, and because I couldn't do that, it just made my personal circumstance so much harder. And because of that, I just said, look, I have to make the choice to create a new purpose for myself. And for so many years, my purpose was helping others through auto accidents. But now that that business has come and gone, what else can I do that will serve others and create a purpose for me? And so that's what I decided to do. It literally drew these four principles, and I call it path to purpose. And I created this little path to purpose model. And I created these four principles as I was sitting in the ICU room with my daughter, because I said, once we get out of here together, because I visualized a better life for all of us. And I knew that eventually we would find that. But at the time, I said, look, I'm going to prepare and try to create this new purpose. And when you're healthy enough and stable enough, that's when I'm going to go pursue it. And so after she had her ablation last year, or right around this time, and she started to feel better, that's when I started putting it into action. And now I just said, you know what? I made the choice to write a book. So that's my first step. I want to write a book. And then after I write a book on purpose, then I want to go and I want to speak about it on stages and let people know that they can create their purpose, and this is how you can do it. And not only that, the book, 100% of the proceeds of the book is going to go back to charity. That's another big thing. That's a big mission of mine. I want to make sure that I pay it forward. And just experiencing what I've experienced through the years of all the giving people that helped my family and I through these hard times, this is the least I could do to give back. And I haven't picked out exactly what charity I want the book's proceeds to go to, but it's definitely going to go back to a charity, and it's just a matter of me working it out with them. But another big one that I always like to throw a plug in there is Make a Wish Foundation. My daughter was fortunate enough to get her wish granted through Make a Wish Michigan, and it was the most amazing experience that we've ever had. It just was so fun to be able to go, and she actually chose to go to the Grammys. And so she went to the Grammys, she walked the red carpet, she got to meet all the famous, singers and actors and actresses that were there. And it was just such a surreal experience for her. But Make a Wish set everything up. And they literally said, you don't have to worry about a thing. We'll set it up from A to Z. And you guys just have to worry about showing up at the airport and we'll take care of everything else. So it was just an amazing experience. And just to see the rest of the kids, because there was about 8 other kids that wanted that same wish. So there's 8 other kids with my daughter, and to see their faces light up and how excited they were, and just to know that they went through some really, really just hard struggles themselves, was just amazing to see. So that charity just means so much to kids that it's like, how can you not want to help that help that charity out?
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you talked about that because my husband and I need to really talk to my son about coming up with one for him. So he's 15. We're like, you need to pick one. I'm sure it'll be sports related, but that
Yeah.
is so cool. She got to go to the Grammys. I love that.
It was. We have a whole bunch of pictures of different celebrities that would walk up to her and talk to her. And it was, like I said, such a great experience. And yeah, it's funny. A lot of the boys, Make a Wish Foundation was telling us that most of the boys pick sporting events, the Super
Mhm.
Bowl,
Mhm.
national
World
championship
Series, right?
games, World Series. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that they pick. But
Yeah.
it is amazing to see an organization just work so tirelessly to make those kids' wish come true. I just can't say enough good things about it. So,
Wonderful.
if any of the listeners out there are looking for a charity to go and support, I can't think of a better one than that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really glad that you brought that up. Oh, such good stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I will be first in line to get that book. And as soon
Thank
as
you.
it is out, we will tell our listeners all about it and I will promote it for sure. And when you're telling your story, you can always count on me. Tell me if it's in Michigan, I will be in the front row because I could listen to
Awesome.
you share your stories all day long. So good. And the other thing I wanted to say before I end off here is I love that you kept talking about path to purpose. Another God wink, I guess. When I started talking about doing this podcast, one of my friends who was a guest on the show early on, she said she has a podcast too. And she said, if you want to put one together, if you want to start preparing and seeing if it's something you can do, come up with a bunch of different titles. I said, I want to drop one every week. She said, come up with 52 titles then. And so I did. And as I was putting it together, many of them start with path to this, path to that, because when you say show me the way, that's what I think about. We're on a path and we have to switch gears or turn right instead of left or whatever. And so I was trying to create almost a series. So I have so many different ones that say path to this, path to that. And the very first episode was path to pivot. So it's really cool that you brought it all together by saying path to purpose. I actually think I have another one already named that, but you've given me a lot of things to think about in terms of how we'll name this one. But yeah, I just think it was such an important for such an important reason that you needed to be on the show. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all of that. I think we could talk for another couple of hours, but
I'm sure we
you
could.
know, we kind of like to keep it within this time frame. So thank you so much for everything you shared. Keep us posted on how everything goes. And yeah, let us know as soon as that book is ready.
I will absolutely do that. I really appreciate my time with you, Andrea. Like I said, I think we could probably talk all day if we wanted to, but I
Yes.
know we have a limited time. And again, thank you so much. I think what you're doing is incredible too with the podcast you've created, and just getting these stories out to the public are so important. Again, spreading that awareness and education. So thank you for allowing me to utilize your platform to be able to do that. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. All the best to you and your family. And like I said, go blue over here, but I'm really proud of your future Sparty, and I hope it all goes really well for her.
I know I'm going to have to get used to saying go green, go white.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you take care, Andrea. Thanks so much.
You too. Thanks, Greg. Thank you for joining me for the Show Me the Way podcast. I truly appreciate you tuning in to today's episode about overcoming adversity and finding your path. I hope it brought you new insights, empowered you with perspective, and inspired you to find joy in your journey. If this episode touched your heart, don't forget to leave a quick review as it will help us reach and motivate more people. Until next time, keep seeking the light and showing the way.